Biden unlikely to last through second term, GOP candidate. Nikki Haley, a former U.S. envoy at the UN, says Vice President Kamala Harris would eventually take over the reins if Biden were elected. U.S. President Joe Biden stands little chance of remaining in office until the end of his second term should he be re-elected next year, Republican presidential contender Nikki Haley has claimed. She warned that widely unpopular Vice President Kamala Harris could end up at the helm. Speaking to Fox News on Thursday, Haley, formerly the U.S. envoy to the UN and an ex-governor of South Carolina, said that if you vote for Joe Biden you really are counting on a President Harris, because the idea that he would make it until 86 years old is not something that I think is likely. Harris does not enjoy particularly strong popular support. A study published by Tittle last week indicated that nearly half of Americans view her performance as vice president either somewhat or very unfavorably. In an interview with Fox News Digital on Wednesday, former Democratic Congresswoman turned independent Tulsi Gabbard stated her view that Kamala Harris is clearly unqualified to be the commander-in-chief. The consequences of President Kamala Harris at the helm would be dangerous and catastrophic for the American people and our nation, Gabbard warned. In a video statement released on Tuesday, 4 years to the day after the launch of his previous presidential campaign, the 80-year-old Biden officially announced that he would run for a second term in 2024. Harris will remain on the ticket as his vice president for this run as well. Biden is already the oldest-serving president in U.S. history, with critics claiming that he no longer possesses the mental acuity to lead the nation. A recent poll published by NBC News revealed that 70% of Americans and 51% of Democratic Party voters did not want Biden to seek re-election. Another survey by the Associated Press yielded identical results. In both polls, respondents cited Biden's advanced age as the main reason for wanting to see someone else vying for the country's top job. Airstrikes, artillery fire continue as Sudan fighting enters third week. The sounds of airstrikes, anti-aircraft weaponry, and artillery could be heard in Khartoum early on Saturday, and dark smoke rose over parts of the city, as fighting in Sudan entered a third week. Fighting between the army and a rival paramilitary force continued despite the announcement of a 72-hour ceasefire extension on Friday, when strikes by air, tanks, and artillery rocked Khartoum and the adjacent cities of Bari and Omdurman. Hundreds have been killed and tens of thousands have fled for their lives in a power struggle between the army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, that erupted into violence on April 15, derailing an internationally backed transition toward democratic elections. The fighting has also reawakened a 2-decade-old conflict in the western Darfur region where scores have died this week. The army has been deploying jets or drones on RSF forces in neighborhoods across the capital. Many residents are pinned down by urban warfare with scant food, fuel, water, and power. At least 512 people have been killed and close to 4,200 wounded, according to the United Nations, which believes the real toll is much higher. More than 75,000 people were internally displaced within Sudan just in the first week of the fighting, according to the UN. Only 16% of hospitals were operating as normal in the capital. The latest ceasefire, brokered by foreign powers, is supposed to last until Sunday midnight. The RSF accused the army of violating it with airstrikes on its bases in Omdurman, Khartoum's sister city at the confluence of the Blue Nile and White Nile rivers, and Mount Alia. The army blamed the RSF for violations. The violence has sent tens of thousands of refugees across Sudan's borders and threatens to stir instability across a volatile swathe of Africa between the Sahel and the Red Sea. In Darfur, at least 96 people had died since Monday in intercommunal violence rekindled by the Army-RSF conflict, UN Human Rights Office spokesperson Ravina Shamdasani said. Watch Iranian Commandos board US-bound oil tanker. Iran seized the errant tanker on Thursday after it slammed into an Iranian fishing boat and attempted to flee the scene a day earlier. The U.S. military has confirmed that Iranian forces have seized the Advantage Suite, a Marshall Islands-flagged crude oil tanker chartered by Chevron carrying crude oil from Kuwait to Texas. Advantage Suite was seized by the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy while transiting international waters in the Gulf of Oman. The oil tanker issued a distress call during the seizure. U.S. Fifth Fleet is monitoring the situation, CENTCOM said in its statement. CENTCOM Commander Michael Eric Kurilla said the tanker's detention was a violation of the international rules-based order by Iran, and claimed that the Islamic Republic's behavior places the security and stability of the Middle East at risk. The U.S. military avoided mentioning allegations by the Iranian side that the Suezmax tanker had slammed into an Iranian fishing boat, injuring several crew and leaving 2 others missing before fleeing the scene of the accident. Iranian media said Navy forces including the Bayandar corvette sailed out of Chabahar port to intercept the Advantage Suite in the Sea of Oman after the fishermen made a distress call. Iran's Navy subsequently seized the tanker in compliance with a confiscation order issued by Iranian judicial authorities. The tanker, operated by a 24-person crew of Indian nationals, was seized by about 1:15 p.m. local time on Thursday, according to the U.S. military. Iranian media later posted dramatic footage of the operation to seize the vessel, showing Iranian commandos armed with automatic weapons descending from a helicopter rope line onto the tanker's deck and proceeding to secure it. The Iranian military also confirmed that it picked up a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft snooping on the Iranian operation. Also Friday, UK business media reported that the seizure of the Advantage Suite followed in the wake of a recent U.S. sanctions enforcement operation which forced the Suez Rajan, a tanker carrying Iranian crude to China, to redirect toward the United States. Tehran, which has faced Western sanctions for decades, has repeatedly condemned U.S. efforts to strangulate the Islamic Republic's economy. DPRK says Washington declaration puts Northeast Asia at greater risk. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, has slammed a joint declaration between the Republic of Korea, ROK, and the United States, saying it will put the peace and security of Northeast Asia at greater risk. As one of the outcomes of ROK President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to the U.S., the so-called Washington Declaration, issued on April 26, says that the U.S. will upgrade what it calls extended deterrence it provides to the ROK, including enhanced consultation over a nuclear crisis. In response, Kim Yo-jong, a senior official of the DPRK, said on Friday that the ROK U.S. declaration would only expose the peace and security of Northeast Asia and the world to more serious danger, adding that it is an act that can thus never be welcome. According to the official Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, under the Washington Declaration, the U.S. and the ROK agree to increase military exercises and training activities, conduct tabletop simulation, establish a new nuclear consultative group, and expand the U.S. regular visibility of strategic assets to the Korean Peninsula. Sources also said the U.S. side is planning to deploy a strategic nuclear submarine in waters off the Korean Peninsula. Kim, also Vice Department Director of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea and younger sister of DPRK's top leader Kim Jong-un, said her country would take more decisive countermeasures as a result of the new security environment, according to the KCNA. Secret $1.6 billion submarine plans found in pub toilet, media. Britain's Royal Navy has launched a probe into the incident. The plans of the torpedo mechanism for the Royal Navy's newest nuclear-powered submarine were found lying on the floor inside a bathroom stall in a pub, British tabloid The Sun reported on Friday, citing a source. The files regarding HMS Anson, an Astute-class vessel, were reportedly marked official sensitive, the second level in the UK government's three-tier classification scheme. People handling official sensitive information must abide by the need-to-know principle, especially if documents might be shared outside of a routine or well-understood business process, the Ministry of Justice website states. According to the newspaper, the files were discovered in a pub in the port town of Barrow-in-Furness, northern England. The establishment is located not far from the base systems shipyard where naval vessels are built. It was quite a lively night, the source, who claimed to have spotted the documents, said. The pub was full of people from the docks, military and civilian. I went into the toilet and the plans were lying on the floor of the cubicle with the lanyard. Anyone could have found them, the source said. The files reportedly included a description of the submarine's hydraulics, which control torpedo hatches, steering, and buoyancy. A Navy spokesperson told The Sun the files were generic training documents, but added that the circumstances of their discovery would be investigated. The Navy describes HMS Anson, which joined the fleet last year, as the cutting edge of the United Kingdom's military capabilities and world's most advanced hunter-killer submarine. In February, the vessel sailed to Naval Base Clyde in Scotland for sea trials. Biden reportedly mulling visit to new NATO member Finland this summer. President Joe Biden is considering visiting newly admitted NATO member Finland this summer, U.S. media reported, citing 3 U.S. officials familiar with the matter. The report said on Friday that a possible trip to Finland will coincide with NATO's summit in Lithuania in July. However, a trip to Finland would be for a summit including several Nordic countries, not for a bilateral meeting, the report said. The U.S. officials, according to the report, believe a potential Biden visit to Finland would grant him an opportunity to highlight maintaining and expanding the NATO alliance. Finland and Sweden both applied for NATO membership in May 2022, several months after Russia launched its special military operation in Ukraine. Finland officially became a member of NATO on April 4. The Kremlin said Finland's accession to NATO is another aggravation of the situation, and Moscow considers the expansion of the alliance an infringement on its security and forces Russia to take countermeasures to ensure its own security. Delhi police ready to file report against Indian Wrestling Federation head. Police in New Delhi have agreed to file a report against Wrestling Federation of India President Brij Bhushan Charan Singh, on the charges of sexually harassing at least 7 female wrestlers. The Indian Supreme Court, which sided with some of India's top wrestlers seeking the registration of a First Information Report, FIR, also ordered the police to provide security to the minor female wrestlers involved in the case. After halting their protests in January when the government said it would investigate their allegations, professional wrestlers took their complaints all the way to India's Supreme Court when the probes into Singh did not materialize. India's top wrestlers also held protests in the streets, demanding claims of sexual abuse by Brij Bhushan Singh be investigated. The Indian Supreme Court inquired with the Delhi police about their non-existent investigation, to which the police said a preliminary inquiry was necessary before they could file a case. Brij Bhushan Singh, who is also a lawmaker in India's parliament, has denied the allegations against him. Deadly crashes ground U.S. Army flights. 12 soldiers have been killed in incidents over the last month, including a fatal episode earlier this week. The U.S. Army has ordered non-critical military flights to be grounded after lethal helicopter crashes in Alaska and Kentucky. The Pentagon said all aviators, including active-duty troops, must undergo additional safety training. The military branch announced the move on Friday, saying the order is effective immediately for all Army personnel excluding those participating in critical missions. The safety of our aviators is our top priority, and this stand-down is an important step to make certain we are doing everything possible to prevent accidents and protect our personnel, Army Chief of Staff James McConville said. The ground stop was prompted by a string of recent mishaps involving Army aircraft. On Thursday, 2 AH-64 Apache helicopters crashed near Healy, Alaska following a training mission, leaving 3 soldiers dead and another wounded. The military has not yet determined the cause of the incident, but investigators were expected to arrive at the scene of the crash on Saturday. 9 Army troops from the 101st Airborne Division were also killed in a separate training accident in Kentucky last month. During a nighttime mission, 2 AH-60 Black Hawk helicopters collided in midair while flying in formation, leaving no survivors. Yet another helicopter wreck took place in Alaska last February, also involving an Apache gunship, which resulted in injuries to soldiers and damage to the aircraft but no fatalities. Though the lethal crashes are still under investigation, the Army said there is no indication of any pattern between the 2 mishaps. To avoid incidents going forward, active duty troops are set to receive new safety training between May 1 and 5, while National Guard and Reserve members will have until May 31 to complete the course, according to Army spokesman Lt. Col. Terrence Kelly. Yoon's U.S. policy slammed as destabilizer of region, humiliating. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's foreign policy toward the United States has been widely criticized as a destabilizer of the region's peace and security, with the South Korean opposition leader calling it humiliating. As one of the outcomes of Yoon's visit to the U.S. and his meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden, the so-called Washington Declaration, issued on April 26, states that the U.S. will upgrade what it calls extended deterrence it provides to the country, including enhanced consultation over a nuclear crisis. Under the joint declaration, the U.S. and South Korea agree to increase military exercises and training activities, conduct tabletop simulations, establish a new nuclear consultative group, and expand the U.S. regular visibility of strategic assets to the Korean peninsula. Sources also said that the U.S. side is planning to deploy a strategic nuclear submarine in waters off the Korean peninsula. Xiang Hao, a researcher from the Institute of Asia-Pacific Studies at China Institute of International Studies, said such moves between the two countries will worsen tensions on the Korean peninsula and run counter to the international community's efforts to promote the peace process on the peninsula. These practices are simply provoking a rise in regional tensions, and not conducive to regional peace and stability, Xiang told China Media Group. In rebuke to the joint declaration, Mao Ning, spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, said on Thursday that the U.S. has been a source of tensions through exploiting the issues on the Korean peninsula. What the U.S. has done stokes bloc confrontation, undermines the nuclear non-proliferation system and hurts the strategic interest of other countries, said Mao. The joint statement released after the Yoon-Biden talks has also caused widespread concerns and criticism in South Korea, with public opinion saying that the Yoon government is leading the country to the center of a new Cold War. On Thursday, the National Youth Committee and the National University Student Committee of South Korea's main opposition Democratic Party held a rally in front of the country's National Assembly Proceeding Hall to condemn the government's diplomatic policy for escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula. Humiliating. A South Korean opposition leader criticized Yoon's foreign policy toward the United States as humiliating on Friday. With regard to the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS and Science Act that were the core agenda in the Yoon-Biden summit, Yoon has not protected our industry and companies at all, said Lee Jae-myung, chairman of the main opposition Democratic Party, at a party meeting. Lee said Yoon's performance at the meeting ended up in a humiliating situation of generously spreading global hagong diplomacy. Hagong, a buzzword in Korean, refers to a customer who is easy to deceive. South Korea's Trade Ministry had previously warned that the CHIPS Act could bring uncertainties and violate management and technology rights for its businesses and companies. Xiang, an international relations researcher, said that America First still dominates the seemingly high-profile interaction between Seoul and Washington. It seems South Korea's efforts to boost its relations with the United States are more like a one-sided, wishful dependence on the U.S., he said. He added that South Korea's U.S. policy has seemed not to be based on any strategic foundation, though the Yoon administration wants to show the country as a great power with global influence. Instead, Yoon's visit has further proved the fact that South Korea is strategically attaching itself to the United States. Syrian air defense repels airstrikes from hostile targets over Homs. Media reports have since detailed that 3 civilians sustained injuries, and that structural damages were detected. It's reported that a number of tanks and trucks were set ablaze in light of the strikes. Syrian air defenses were activated early Saturday after airstrikes were fired from an undisclosed group in Homs, state media has reported. The Syrian Arab news agency confirmed the strikes shortly after midnight, noting that forces were repelling hostile targets in the region. In a follow-up translated release, the outlet noted that a number of missiles had been fired from the direction of northern Lebanon. It further indicated that some of the projectiles were shot down. Unconfirmed media reports have indicated that numerous explosions were detected in the area, and that air defenses initially missed the first round of strikes before responding to a second wave. Video footage allegedly documenting the Saturday hostilities has surfaced on social media. A source related to the state media publication that the strikes resulted in injuries to 3 civilians and struck a civilian gas tank and various tanks and trucks. The latest comes after the Syrian Defense Ministry detailed earlier April that air defenses had struck down multiple rockets fired by Israel, adding that the missiles had been fired from the Golan Heights at the time. Although Israeli officials have not indicated their involvement in the strikes, Israel has previously carried out such launches in Syria as a means to clamp down on any terroristic behavior allegedly committed by Iran-backed groups. Russian defense minister says actions of U.S. allies eroded global security. Actions of the United States and its allies aimed at preserving the U.S. world dominance have eroded the global security architecture, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said on Friday. In an effort to maintain its world dominance, the United States and its allies have seriously eroded the global security architecture. On their initiative, the process of demolition and dismantling of key agreements on arms control and confidence building has been launched, Shoigu told a meeting of the defense ministers of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, in New Delhi. The Russian defense chief recalled that Washington had first unilaterally terminated the Soviet-US Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, refused to ratify the Adapted Conventional Armed Forces in Europe Treaty, and then had withdrawn from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty and the Treaty on Open Skies. In addition, Shoigu noted that the current meeting with colleagues from SCO member states was taking place in an extremely unstable international environment. The formation of a new multipolar world is causing drastic, dynamic, and irreversible changes, which are opposed by the collective West, the Russian defense minister said. Sergei Shoigu also highlighted that the conflict in Ukraine confirms the focus of Washington and its allies on provoking other countries to a military confrontation with Moscow and Beijing. Today, Washington and its accomplices are implementing their strategic plan, which consists in provoking other countries into a military confrontation with, primarily with Russia and China. A clear confirmation of such a criminal policy is the conflict in Ukraine. Its true goal is to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia, threaten China, and maintain its monopoly position in the world, Shoigu said at a regular defense ministers meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, member states. The United States seeks to reformat the system of interstate relations by creating controlled regional alliances, using blackmail and threats, the minister added. Russian, Chinese defense chiefs hold talks at SCO ministerial meeting. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and his Chinese counterpart, Li Shangfu, held talks on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, defense ministers meeting in New Delhi on Friday to discuss issues of mutual interest, a Sputnik correspondent reported. The negotiations between the Russian and Chinese defense ministers were not planned in advance, as follows from the protocol of the event. In addition, Shoigu and Li briefly exchanged views on a number of pressing issues before the start of the SCO ministerial meeting and between its sessions. On April 18, the Chinese defense chief paid a visit to Moscow, where he had a meeting with Shoigu. Following the negotiations, the Chinese Defense Ministry said Li's trip to Russia demonstrated the deepening of mutual trust and partnership between the country's armed forces. The SCO is an international organization founded by China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Russia, and Uzbekistan in 2001. In 2017, India and Pakistan were also admitted to the organization. The SCO also has Afghanistan, Belarus, Iran, and Mongolia as observer states, while Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Turkey are partner countries. In July 2022, Belarus submitted its application to join the SCO as a full-fledged member. Economists say expanding demand key to sustained economic recovery. Economic experts have weighed in on the recent Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China, CPC, Central Committee meeting on Friday, echoing the official stance of a need to expand China's domestic demand and manage challenges to promote high-quality development. Zhang Diang, a researcher at the Institute of Finance and Economics of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, said that the foundation for the current economic recovery needs to be further consolidated, reported financial news outlet Yakai. For example, Zhang said, the growth rate of retail industry is not as good as that of tourism and catering industry. In terms of investment structure, growth of private investment has been at a low level, while real estate investment is also still relatively low. Meanwhile, Chinese think tank China Finance 40 Forum recently released a report recommending several key focus areas to invigorate the Chinese economy. These include, lowering the country's policy interest rate, driving down the real interest rate and stimulating market vitality, maintaining credit growth and infrastructure investment supported by policies, maintaining liquidity support for real estate enterprises, and lastly, directing subsidies to low-income groups and introducing measures to support consumption recovery. At the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee meeting held in Beijing, it was emphasized that the recovery and expansion of demand are vital to the continuous recovery of the economy. Officials at the meeting concluded that a proactive fiscal policy must be strengthened to improve efficiency and prudent monetary policy must be precise and powerful enough to form a joint force to expand demand. It was also noted that it is necessary to increase the income of urban and rural residents through multiple channels, improve the consumption environment and promote the consumption of services such as cultural tourism. It is also imperative to give full play to the guiding role of government investment and policy incentives, and effectively stimulate private investment, officials said at the meeting. China's GDP growth exceeded expectations by registering a 4.5% year-on-year increase in the first quarter of 2023 as economic activities regains momentum. Cyprus offers EU alternative to Russian gas. Local energy resources can be used to partly compensate for the sanctioned country's supplies, President Nikos Christodoulides says. Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulides has proposed that the EU use natural gas from the eastern Mediterranean as a replacement for Russian supplies, which make up a shrinking percentage of Europe's energy sources since Ukraine-related sanctions went into effect last year. In an interview on Friday, the head of the island nation said that the region could cover about 15%-16% of the bloc's gas needs over the next 25 years. Europe's greatest weakness in the current crisis with Ukraine is its energy dependence on Russian gas. The Eastern Mediterranean alone certainly cannot replace Russian gas. There are no such quantities that can replace Russian natural gas in total, but there are certainly those quantities that can mitigate the EU's dependence, he stated. Christodoulides noted that the bloc has already invested in the region and we expect more technical and financial support, so that we can exploit the potential of the region. Following the sabotage of the Russian Nord Stream pipelines last year, the transit line through the territory of Ukraine is currently the only route for Russian gas supplies to the countries of Western and Central Europe. Russia also supplies some fuel via Turk Stream and Blue Stream to southern and southeastern Europe. In early March, the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said that Russian gas exports to Europe had dropped by 80% in 8 months, and the region now relies on Norway's gas fields and liquefied natural gas, LNG, imports from the US to meet its needs. Christodoulides' comment comes mere weeks after Cyprus came under fire for its links to Russia. The financial haven is known for its lax banking and financial services regulation, and saw 13 entities and individuals placed on US and UK sanctions lists for allegedly servicing sanctioned Russian businessmen. Several days later, the island's largest lender, the Bank of Cyprus, announced that it would close about 10,000 accounts belonging to 4,000 Russian depositors. Eurozone avoids recession with feeble growth as Germany stagnates. The euro area's economy grew by 0.1% in the first quarter of 2023, following another quarter of 0.1% at the end of last year. Despite minimal growth, the bloc avoided a predicted technical recession. Economists had foreseen that the Eurozone's economy would shrink in the last quarter of 2022 and first quarter of 2023, plunging the region into recession. Europe's economies have been struggling with persistently high inflation, which hit a record 10.6% in October 2022, primarily driven by skyrocketing energy prices as a result of Russia's attack on Ukraine. While inflation levels have decreased in recent months, they remain high, hitting 6.9% in March. Looking at individual member states shows a varied picture across the EU. Germany's economy stagnated in the first quarter of this year, with the bloc's other big economy, France, seeing a 0.2% increase. Spain, Italy, and Belgium all enjoyed growth in the same quarter. Ireland, meanwhile, saw the largest GDP drop, with negative growth of -2.7%. This compared to Portugal's 1.6% growth, making it the bloc's best-performing economy. Sluggish economic growth paired with persistently high inflation means all eyes are on the European Central Bank's interest rates decision on May 4. ECB President Christine Lagarde gave nothing away at a press conference alongside EU finance ministers on Tuesday. "You should not expect me to say anything about the macroeconomic and financial developments, nor anything about the monetary policy decision that we will take on Thursday. I can't do that, and if you ask me, I'll say, terribly sorry. Nevertheless, the bank is widely expected to raise interest rates by 0.25%, slower than the 0.5% hike seen in previous months, in the hopes of dealing a final and fatal blow to stubborn inflationary pressures in Europe." Report, J.P. Morgan, PNC vying to buy First Republic amid potential U.S. government seizure. On March 9, customers at Silicon Valley Bank reported problems withdrawing or transferring money from their accounts. The next day, regulators took over the bank and promised to make depositors whole. However, the incident caused a crisis of confidence for customers at other banks, resulting in more bank runs. PNC Financial Services and J.P. Morgan Chase are both vying to buy First Republic Bank amid reports the U.S. government may soon take control of the troubled financial entity. Citing insiders with knowledge of the developments, U.S. media has reported that both the seizure and the purchase could be completed this weekend. Reports that the regulators plan to take over First Republic began to emerge Friday afternoon. Both J.P. Morgan and PNC have a history of taking over failed banks during crises. J.P. Morgan bought the embattled Bear Stearns in 2008 and took over Washington Mutual after a government seizure. Also during the 2008 crisis, PNC purchased National City Corporate with assistance from the government, a Cleveland bank that was struggling. First Republic Bank has been teetering on the edge of collapse since the March 10 collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, SVB. The SVB collapse reportedly led to a bank run on First Republic, with over $100 billion being pulled out by customers in a matter of days. Since the SVB collapse, First Republic Bank stock has lost nearly 97% of its value. A group of banks, including J.P. Morgan Chase and PNC, had tried to shore up the bank with a $30 billion injection to no avail. First Republic had attempted to find a buyer without a government seizure, sought outside investments and floated the idea of selling its loans and securities above market value, but none of those plans came to fruition. The troubled financial institution had $233 billion in assets before the collapse, and it is likely to become the second largest bank to fail in U.S. history. A spokesperson declined to comment to U.S. media. The bank's fate seemed sealed on Monday when it released its earnings reports and revealed it had shored up customer deposits by taking expensive loans from the Federal Reserve and Federal Home Loan Bank. The loans effectively put the bank in a position where it would pay more in liabilities than it could earn from its assets. The report sent First Republic's stock price into a free fall, losing 50% of its value in one day. The 2023 U.S. banking crisis began when concerns skyrocketed about the health of multiple mid-sized banks and depositors with more than the FDIC insured $250,000, with clients opting to pull their money out in large numbers as a precaution. The sudden drawdown caused SVB to collapse and the New York-based Signature Bank to fail just days later. The government bailed out both banks, though they did not use that language, and made depositors at both banks whole. On Friday, the Federal Reserve, FDIC, and Government Accountability Office released separate reports on the bank failures, pointing the finger not only at bank mismanagement but also at regulators for acting too slow and without enough force. They also blamed relaxed regulations on small and medium-sized banks. Kiev decries EU restrictions on Ukrainian imports. The authorities claim the measures run counter to the existing trade agreements. The Ukrainian authorities have sent notes of protest to the Polish and EU embassies, decrying the restrictions on imports of the country's agricultural products to the bloc. This was announced on Saturday by Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman Oleg Nikolenko in a Facebook post. According to Nikolenko, Ukraine considers the restrictions utterly unacceptable. Such restrictions, for whatever reason, do not comply with the Ukraine-EU Association Agreement and the principles and norms of the EU single market, he wrote. The minister noted that Kiev has all legal grounds to immediately resume its exports to Poland, Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, and Bulgaria and continue uninterrupted transit of all Ukrainian products to other countries both inside and outside of the EU. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry urged its EU partners to find a balanced solution based on EU legislation, the association agreement, and in the spirit of solidarity, he added. Earlier this month, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and Bulgaria unilaterally banned the import of agricultural products from Ukraine in a bid to protect their domestic markets, which has been overflowing with cheap Ukrainian products. Romania did not impose an import ban, but joined the other four in calls for Brussels to free the region of Ukrainian goods. After 2 weeks of discussions, the European Commission and the 5 member states struck a deal on Friday, which involves replacing the individual bans placed by the countries on Ukrainian imports with emergency safeguard measures for 4 major staples: wheat, maize, rapeseed, and sunflower seeds. Sources claim that imports of these crops into the 5 Eastern European countries will likely be blocked unless for transit. Major sci-tech facilities open in China's Shenzhen. 3 major scientific and technological facilities in the fields of information, the life sciences and new materials were put into use on Thursday in Guangming Science City, South China's high-tech hub of Shenzhen. The projects are 2 major scientific and technological pieces of infrastructure for synthetic biology research, brain analysis, and brain simulation, and a large scientific device platform for material genomics, according to the Guangming Science City Forum 2023. Which was held on Thursday in Shenzhen. Large scientific facilities play the role of the cradle in basic research, which is of great significance to breaking through the frontiers of science and promoting economic and social development. The next step involves strengthening the coordination of large scientific facilities, giving full play to their cluster effect, and building a multidisciplinary research platform, said Hanja Ike, an academician at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. As a key area supporting the Guangdong-Hong Kong-Macau Greater Bay Area as it builds itself into an international innovation center, Guangming Science City has planned to build 24 sci-tech innovation entities, including large scientific facilities and cutting-edge, cross-research platforms. Seismic waves rippling through Mars' core offer clue about how it became hostile to life. NASA put the lid on its InSight Mars lander mission last December after it stopped responding to communications from Earth. Dust had accumulated on its solar panels, draining the lander of energy. But after 4 years of seismic monitoring, its data is still being analyzed, offering remarkable revelations about the red planet. Seismic waves have been discovered for the first time rippling through Mars' core, offering clues as to why the red planet evolved to become barren and hostile to life. Analysis of readings from 2 different seismic events, measured by the seismograph of NASA's InSight, an acronym for Interior Exploration Using Seismic Investigations, Geodesy, and Heat Transport, Mars Lander, was carried out by a team of seismologists and planetary scientists. They discovered that Mars' core is very different from Earth, laying out their findings in a paper published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences on April 24. This could answer the question why, despite evidence that there had been liquid on Mars, an indication that life could once have existed there, it evolved into a rocky landscape of parched lake beds and dormant volcanoes. With InSight, we're finally discovering what's at the center of Mars and what makes Mars so similar yet distinct from Earth, Vidran Lekic, research author and University of Maryland, UMD, associate professor of geology, said in a statement. Mars most probably has a completely liquid core, the research revealed, unlike our planet Earth, which consists of a combination of a liquid outer core and solid inner core. Analyzing how the seismic events, a Mars quake and a large meteorite impact, rippled through the planet, the team combined this data with other seismic and geophysical measurements. They subsequently estimated the density and compressibility of the material through which the waves traveled. Furthermore, they discovered that although the core of Mars is probably composed of carbon, sulfur, oxygen, and hydrogen, its bulk consists of liquid iron, like the core of planet Earth. However, the amount on Mars is not sufficient for it to generate a strong magnetic field. The uniqueness of Earth's core allows it to generate a magnetic field that protects us from solar winds, allowing us to keep water. Mars' core does not generate this protective shield, and so the planet's surface conditions are hostile to life, Associate Geology Professor Nicholas Schmer of the University of Maryland and co-author of the paper stated. The team have been able to take away two certainties from the results of their research. First, earlier conceptions of Mars' interior are correct, and second, the results will be useful for future geological investigations of other planets in the solar system, such as Venus and Mercury. Even though the InSight mission ended in December 2022, Leakek said, it will continue to influence how we understand the formation and evolution of Mars and other planets for years to come. China opens first space science popularization exhibition. An exhibition on China's crewed space program and applications has been opened to the public for free at the China Science and Technology Museum in Beijing. It is the country's first science popularization exhibition on the theme of space science and applications. The exhibition area is about 2,000 square meters, including 5 sections, more than 10 theme scenes and more than 30 exhibition items. On display to the public for the first time are the original scientific experiment cabinet and Arabidopsis plants grown from seeds that were brought back from the space station. Through immersive, digital, and other technologies, the exhibition provides interactive and immersive experiences, such as Shenzhou spacecraft and Moon Homeland. The exhibition is sponsored by the Technology and Engineering Center for Space Utilization under the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the China Science and Technology Museum. It is open to the public free of charge from April 29 to June 15. Russian paratroopers to receive new Zavesty artillery control vehicles in 2023. The systems are being developed by the Rubin Research and Production Company and are based on the BTRMDM Rakushka amphibious armored personnel carrier. They can reliably detect and identify various targets, including concealed ones, providing interaction capabilities between artillery and drones. Russian airborne troops will receive new automated artillery control vehicles called Zavesty by the end of 2023, which will double the efficiency of artillery, according to the press service of the Rostec State Corporation. The first batch of the systems will be delivered to troops by the end of 2023, the corporation statement reads. The complex is equipped with a reconnaissance optical electronic system and an external radar. It can detect a target at a distance of up to 7,000 meters and identify it at a distance of up to 5,000 meters. The vehicle determines the direction and speed of enemy movement, identifies targets, and distributes them according to the degree of danger, after which it provides targeting to artillery crews in real time. The Zavesty is capable of increasing the effectiveness of artillery systems used by the airborne forces, such as the 2C9 Nona S self-propelled guns, 2C9-1 Sphira Stelka, and 2C9-1M Nona SM, by 1.5 to 2 times. Second ring on dwarf planet Quaoar challenges fundamental laws of astrophysics. An international team of astronomers has made a groundbreaking discovery regarding Quaoar, a dwarf planet within the Kuiper belt that was first pinpointed by scientists in the early 2000s. Scientists have unearthed evidence proving that the fairly newly discovered dwarf planet Quaoar is not circled by a lone ring but by 2 rings. The finding marks yet another challenge to current theories on the formation of ring systems and moons, as both rings exist beyond the Roche limit, defined as the minimum distance in which a large planetary satellite can approach its primary body without tidal forces disrupting internal gravity. The study's discovery effectively contradicts theories that posit material within the Roche limit should be drawn apart by tidal forces, resulting in a ring, while material outside of it would form a satellite. Ring systems are commonly observed in massive planets, however, rings can also occur in plutoids, small planets beyond the orbit of Neptune. Main theories state the leading role of gravitational dominance, when there are no other massive bodies around for millions of kilometers, that even a dwarf planet can capture debris and ring itself. However, further observations showed Quaoar's rings are unusual as they are recorded as being very dense, only a few kilometers wide, and both lie beyond the Roche limit. It remains unclear why both rings did not merge and form a moon. However, officials have speculated that Waywatt, a moon of Quaoar, could be behind the ring formations. The two rings are not visible to the naked eye, and were only discovered through the observation of Quaoar passing in front of distant stars. Scientists were able to discern the presence of the first ring through changes in the starlight's intensity. By pointing their equipment at the planet during a subsequent occultation, they were able to detect the second ring in greater detail. Notably, officials discovered it contains a dense core only a few miles wide. The team plans to continue studying the rings during future occultations. Michael Brown and Chad Trujillo were first to discover Quaoar in 2002. Subsequent research has indicated that it is about 1/12 of the Earth's diameter and contains water ice on its surface, as well as signs of volcanoes erupting water due to low temperatures. The study was accepted for publication in the journal Astronomy and Astrophysics. 19th-century Florida shipwreck sees day of light thanks to storm erosion. The discovery of a second shipwreck in Daytona Beach Shores, Florida, has caused excitement among maritime archaeologists and historians alike. The discovery was made possible due to severe erosion caused by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole, which have helped expose wrecks along the state's coastline. Researchers recently made a shocking but not so shocking find in shallow waters along the Florida coastline, a shipwreck dating back to the mid to late 1800s. Although the find has captivated experts working on the shipwreck, officials have noted that such discoveries occur often as ships frequently navigated the Florida coast in the 19th century. Despite the turbulent conditions of the ocean, the team was able to see enough of the wreck to determine that it is a substantial wreck with big iron framework on the inside after having scuba dived toward the structure. The archaeologists believe the ship was a cargo vessel and was similar in mission to an initial shipwreck that was found in November 2022, about a mile and a half north of the latest discovery. Officials are presently working together to map the wreckage and identify it through historical records. The discovery of these shipwrecks provides a unique opportunity for researchers to learn more about Florida's maritime history and the types of vessels that were used for trade and transportation during the 19th century. The discovery also highlights the importance of preserving historical artifacts and protecting them from looting or destruction. The team of experts is working closely with local authorities to ensure that the site is protected, and that any further discoveries are properly documented and preserved. You have to treat it kind of like a crime scene. We are the CSI investigators. The more you remove from the site, the less of a story that we have, so it's important to just leave things as they are and give us a call, said Melissa Price of the Florida Department of State. As the ship will remain where it is, locals in the area are being asked not to touch them. SpaceX postpones Falcon Heavy launch for fourth time, next attempt Saturday. SpaceX scrubbed the launch of its sixth Falcon Heavy mission for a fourth time and will carry out its next attempt on Saturday, a SpaceX broadcaster said. The SpaceX broadcaster said the next launch window for the Falcon Heavy booster will begin Saturday night at 8:26 p.m. EST, 12:26 a.m. GMT, from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The Falcon Heavy launch was cancelled a minute before takeoff on Friday, and SpaceX did not provide an immediate explanation for the reason of the delay. The Falcon Heavy rocket, which uses 3 boosters, will carry 3 payloads that will deploy multiple satellites to geostationary orbit. Prior to the launch, SpaceX founder Elon Musk wrote on social media account that the company will conduct a Falcon Heavy risk review. About to do the Falcon Heavy risk review, Musk said Friday night. "I love that rocket, but it's scary. So many state changes post-liftoff." The main payload on the Falcon Heavy rocket was a 14,000-pound broadband satellite operated by California-based firm Viasat. The Falcon Heavy mission is also sending a communication satellite that will be operated by California-based firm Astranis Space Technologies, and a CubeSat that will be operated by Washington-based firm Gravity Space to provide communications for Internet of Things applications. Earlier on Friday, SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 rocket, which uses one booster, to deploy 2 satellites for the Luxembourg-based telecommunications company SES. The Falcon rockets used in both SpaceX missions are reusable.